Short story. Horror. Object. Graham stared at the strange-looking object. It was 7 inches in height and 2 inches wide, and dark grey. His son had found it while at the beach earlier that afternoon. The beach wasn't that far from where they lived. He heard Thomas in his bedroom, just down the hall, as he played his new computer game. Graham had stood the object on a cabinet, near to the bed. The more he looked at it, the more excited he became. He didn't understand why it made him feel like this, because it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. As it looked dull, like a thick dark branch with no redeeming features. But there was something about it, which he couldn't quite comprehend. It was like an electrifying energy came from it. "Dad, when's tea going to be ready?" shouted his son from the other room. Bloody hell, he thought. He'd completely forgotten about it. Graham stood up, making his way to the kitchen. He got the burgers out of the freezer, and put them on a plate. Once the rolls and salad had been prepared, he opened the oven door, and stuck them in. Warmth was felt on his face. Should take 25 minutes, job done. Once he was back in the bedroom, he sat down on the bed, and glanced longingly at the dark object. It seemed to call out to him, or was he imagining this? On the surface of it, Graham saw a circle appear, and it danced in front of him. It was so intoxicating to look at, he didn't hear his son calling his name. The dancing shape was now joined by a second one. This was the most awesome thing he had ever witnessed. A hand was felt on his shoulder, which made him jump. His son stared at him with a worried expression. "Are you okay, Dad?" "Yeah, I'm fine. What's wrong?" Graham replied. Thomas seemed annoyed, and said, "The food is burnt, why didn't you check it earlier?" What was he talking about? "What do you mean, mate? I only put them in 5 minutes ago," he answered. Thomas ran a hand through his brown hair, then said, "What's wrong, Dad? Are you having a nervous breakdown or something?" "What are you talking about, Thomas?" he said angrily. "Why are you playing these silly games?" Thomas pointed to the clock on the wall, just above the television. "Look for yourself, Dad." The time was 6:33 p.m. Graham remembered putting the food in the oven, dead on 5:30. "Oh my God, what was happening? I don't understand, son. To my knowledge, I went into the kitchen 10 minutes ago, and all I've done since then is look at the object you got from the beach." Yet again, his eyes were drawn to it. Thomas realized something wasn't right, as his dad was acting strange. "Look at me, Dad. For God's sake, why are you so obsessed with that stupid thing? You keep staring at it. What the hell is wrong with you?" Graham now saw 3 circles, while they danced in front of him. It was the most magnificent sight. Thomas tried to pull his dad away from the mysterious object, but his body was rigid. He looked into his eyes, and they were blank. What the hell was wrong with him? Thomas had found the object earlier, under the pier. At the time, he didn't think much of it, and picked it up, throwing it into his bag, with other items he'd collected that day. Now he wished he had left it. He needed to do something quick. Thomas slapped his dad hard around the face. Graham looked at his son with an angry expression. He grabbed Thomas, and threw him to the floor. "What's your bloody problem?" he yelled. Thomas tried to get up, petrified. "Please don't, I beg you," he pleaded. Graham picked him up and pushed his face into the object, saying, "Just look at it, and you'll understand what it means to me." Thomas screamed in terror, but it was already too late. Graham carried his son to the end of the bed, where he sat beside him. He smiled at Thomas. "Now you understand, my dear son." There was no answer. He placed a hand softly on his son's shoulder, and glanced longingly at the object. The stench coming from the house was terrible. A neighbor had alerted the police, complaining of it. The policeman walked up the narrow path to the entrance. He knocked on the door. No one answered. At that moment, he used force. He smashed the lock, and within seconds, the door opened. He placed a hand over his nose and mouth, making his way in. He searched near enough every room, while he made his way to the back of the house. In the hallway, the man pushed open a door, to be confronted by a very odd sight. A meter from him were two males, sat at the end of a bed. The policeman proceeded into the room. With sadness, he realized both were dead. Then the strangest-looking object caught his eye. The end.